Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing you my review of Kings of the Wyld by Eames. So, first things first, this will be a completely spoiler-free review. I'm going to just talk about the characters, how I felt, and kind of like why I think this is a good book for people, but it will be spoiler-free, so don't worry about that before you click away. So, Kings of the Wyld by Eames it's kind of like fantasy light, I guess I would say, where it's not so focused on the world building or the big, huge moral dilemma that a lot of fantasy series deal with. This is very, very much based on characters and who kind of find themselves in a series of situations. It is very much based on a Dungeons and Dragons type campaign where a group of people are together and they go on this adventure and things just keep happening and they have to just keep rolling with it. So, the general plot of this book is there is a band of 5 men who used to be a very famous mercenary band. They called themselves Saga, / other people called them Saga. They were incredibly famous, really well known, people loved them. This book takes place 10 years down the line. They've all grown a little bit older, perhaps a little bit drunker, perhaps a little bit out of shape, and some of them have grown into the lives that they wanted to live. Like, a lot of them have families or other things that they're working on now. Gabe decides that he needs to get the band back together because he wants to go and rescue his daughter, Rose. Rose is a mercenary as well, and she went out to help fight this battle at one of the cities, and now basically that city is kind of trapped, and so Gabe is desperate to try and rescue his daughter. And his first stop is Clay, who is our point of view character, and he's like, look, I know that we haven't seen each other in a while, and I know that you've given up the life, but what do you say? The first, quarter to third of the book is basically just getting the band back together. And and honestly, what a band this is. Like, the biggest highlight for me for this whole entire book is definitely the characters themselves. So, and so the characters that we have is obviously Clay, who is our point of view character. He is very much the newly-ish settled down. He loves his wife and daughter. He doesn't really want to go on this quest, but feels really compelled to because Gabe is one of his best friends, and if it was his daughter, he would want to go and save her. And then you have Gabe, who is very much the sort of washed up hero whose daughter kind of listened to one too many of his stories and is now trying to make a name for herself. He was in love with his wife, who ended up leaving him for somebody else, and so he is kind of dealing with that. He is sort of trying to have one last hurrah. You have Mook, who is the wizard of the group, and Mook, who is desperately trying to find this cure for this disease. When his friends show up at his door after years, he is immediately giddy over the idea of going on an adventure again, and he is ready to go. Then you have Maddie or Matrick, who is currently a king, who married the princess they rescued years ago, who has turned out to be an incredibly controlling person, an incredibly controlling woman who is actively trying to kill him. So when his friends show up, he's like, could you guys get me out of here? This is the worst situation I've ever been in. Then they have to go and rescue their buddy Ganlin, who they left on not the best of circumstances, so there's a big contention of whether they should go and get him, or whether he's going to even want to help them, or if he's just going to straight up kill them as soon as they see each other. So the whole kind of getting the band back together is a story in and of itself, and it really made you care about the characters very, very quickly, and that's fantastic because this book is very, very character based. For people who love really, really high fantasy or intense fantasy where they care a lot about the world building and they want to know all the intricacies of the world and feel like all of those, the most minuet detail is important and things like that, this might not necessarily be the book for you because a lot of that stuff is more broad strokes, and the story itself is very, very character based or character focused and character driven. This is, however, a fantastic book for people who are kind of worried or kind of want to get into fantasy, but those high epic fantasies are very, very intimidating. It is also a complete story in and of itself. There is a sequel, but it follows a slightly different cast of characters, so that might also appeal to some people who don't necessarily want to commit to reading 3 to 5 books. Like I said, the story in and of itself is basically the band getting back together and venturing down to where Gabe's daughter Rose is currently stuck, and they kind of fall into different adventures, they fall into different situations that they have to fight or maneuver their way out of, and obviously things don't quite always go to plan, as a true Dungeons and Dragons game we'll show you. The thing I liked the most about the overarching plot is obviously the rescuing the daughter thing, which could very easily be seen as sort of misogynistic or sexist, that, oh, this group of men needs to come in and save this girl, this young woman, but it never felt that way for me. It really felt like a father who felt like he didn't do enough where he just feels like he let his daughter down and is like, the least I can do is at least go and try to help out. It's incredibly fun. It's really fast paced. I read it in 2 days. It's not bogged down with info dumps or too much world building. It felt very much like you were connected to the world, but again, it's very, very character focused, so you're just more so following this group of people and sort of hoping for the best. It was also incredibly funny, and it was really lighthearted for being the story that it was. This book just didn't take itself too seriously, and that kind of made it more impactful in a way. So, final thoughts. The story itself, I would 100% give 5 stars to. I really enjoyed it. It was incredible. Like I said, it was very fast paced. It wasn't a huge, overarching, major story. It was more a sort of personal story, a personal journey that factored into a bigger, overarching sort of situation, I guess, if you will. But I really enjoyed the story that we got. I really liked the journey that these guys went on. I enjoyed myself reading this book immensely, so I have to give this story and this plot like 5 stars. All of the characters felt like individual characters, even the sort of more minor characters. You kind of got the vibe of who this person was very, very quickly, and you could tell if you were going to mesh with this person or not. Each character was really, really well developed, really well thought out, and all of their actions made sense within the characters and how they reacted to certain things. I loved every single one of these guys, and I liked most of the side characters as well. There's a couple that I didn't like, but you're really not supposed to like them, so it's okay. So because the main 5 characters were absolutely enjoyable and really felt like true characters, like people that I could potentially meet or would play with in a D&D game, I would give the characters themselves 5 stars. The writing itself was also really, really good, where it didn't try to be more than it was. It's a very easy to read and easy to digest fantasy while still giving you a very intense and emotional sort of cathartic story in and of itself. So the writing I would also give 5 stars to. So, I mean, obviously, overall my rating is going to be 5 stars. I don't feel like that's surprising to anyone. Everything about this book was incredibly fun. It was enjoyable. I literally enjoyed every minute of reading this book. So again, I would highly recommend this book. It was really, really fun. It was just a really fun, enjoyable journey and book to read. I would highly recommend it to people who love fantasy and who are kind of new to fantasy or are very intimidated by fantasy. I would say that this is a very good place to start. You get a lot of the typical tropes of fantasy without necessarily being overwhelmed by the details and or world building that can sometimes feel like an info dump in some fantasies. So that's my review of The Kings of the Wyld. Let me know in the comments below if you've read this book or if you're thinking of potentially picking it up and why. Any other fantasy books or series that you think kind of fits this similar theme of being more fantasy light, if you will, or more fun, humorous fantasy, because I really enjoyed myself, so I'd like to read more if you guys have them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.